in the kitchen making coffee when your phone rings. It's your best friend asking how your new relationship is going. You freeze for a few seconds because you've just realized something disturbing. You're having exactly the same conversation you had 6 months ago with your ex, a year ago with the previous one, and 2 years ago with who you thought was the love of your life. The same doubts, the same fears, the same conflicts, as if you were an actor playing the same role in different plays, with different actors, but following exactly the same script. Maybe you're one of those who always ends up being the friend to the person you like. Or perhaps you're someone who always attracts emotionally unavailable people who promise to change, but never do. You might be the type of person who gives everything from day one and ends up exhausted, wondering why no one values your dedication. Or maybe you're the one who runs away just when things get serious, always finding flaws in the other to justify your escape. What really disturbs you isn't that relationships end. What keeps you awake at night is that chilling sensation of being trapped in a loop, as if you were destined to repeat the same mistakes over and over, as if you were a prisoner of invisible patterns that control your love life without you being able to do anything to stop them. This repetition isn't coincidence, nor bad luck, nor evidence that good people don't exist. It's something much deeper and, paradoxically, much more hopeful than you imagine. What you experience is the external manifestation of an internal code that was programmed into you before you were conscious of its existence, a code that determines not only whom you choose, but how you choose, when you choose, and why you choose exactly the people who confirm your deepest beliefs about yourself and about love. Carl Jung described it as the inevitable encounter between two unconsciouses, where each person attracts exactly what they need to confront their own unresolved wounds. It's not that you have bad luck in love. It's that your psyche is orchestrating encounters that force you to face aspects of yourself you'd prefer to keep hidden. Each relationship is, in essence, a mirror that reflects your internal world. And each repetitive pattern is a desperate invitation from your soul for you to finally pay attention to what needs to be healed. The first pillar you need to understand is what psychologists call the primary love map. Between ages 2 and 5, while your brain was developing fundamental neural connections, you observed the dynamic between your parents or primary caregivers and created an invisible mold of what love means. This mold isn't based on what they told you about love, but on what you witnessed. If you grew up seeing your mother chasing affection from an emotionally absent father, your brain coded that loving means pursuing someone who isn't completely available. If you saw your father constantly pleasing a critical mother, you learned that loving means sacrificing your authenticity to avoid conflict. What's fascinating and disturbing about this process is that your adult brain will seek to recreate these exact dynamics, not because you enjoy them, but because they're familiar. Your nervous system interprets familiar as safe, even when that familiarity includes pain, abandonment, or emotional drama. This is why you can find yourself attracted to people who awaken in you the same sensations you experienced in childhood. That mixture of longing, anxiety, and hope that this time will be different, this time you'll receive the love you always sought. Your primitive brain doesn't distinguish between recreating a pattern and healing it. It simply seeks the known, like a GPS that always takes the same route home, even if that route passes through dangerous areas. That's why you can have all the rational information in the world about healthy relationships, but still choose exactly the opposite when the real opportunity presents itself. The second pillar is what Jung called the relational shadow. Every person who attracts your romantic attention isn't there by chance. They're reflecting aspects of yourself that you've rejected, denied, or idealized. If you're constantly attracted to narcissistic people, very likely there are parts of you that long to be the center of attention, but you've repressed them for considering them bad or selfish. If you always end up with dependent people who need you to save them, it's because there are aspects of you that feel powerful and valuable only when others need you. The relational shadow works in two ways. First, you project onto the other the qualities you admire but believe you don't possess. If you feel attracted to extremely self-confident people, it's probably because your own insecurity seeks to feel complete through the other's confidence. Second, you attract people who project their own unresolved shadows onto you. If you always end up being the savior or the stable one in relationships, it's because you unconsciously emit signals that you're willing to carry the emotional weight others don't want to bear. This shadow exchange creates what therapists call trauma bonds, where two people need each other not to grow and be happy, but to keep their neuroses in balance. It's like a closed system where each confirms the other's wounds. You prove your theory that you don't deserve to be loved completely by choosing someone incapable of loving you completely, and that person confirms their theory that they can get love without giving anything in return, by receiving your unconditional dedication. The third pillar is the concept of repetition compulsion, which Freud identified as the human tendency to recreate painful situations from the past in an unconscious attempt to master or resolve them. Your unconscious mind believes that if it manages to perfectly recreate the original situation of abandonment, rejection, or emotional neglect, this time it will be able to control the outcome and obtain the love it didn't receive. This is why you can find yourself choosing people who treat you similarly to how you were treated in childhood, not because you enjoy the pain, but because your psyche is trying to win a battle it lost long ago. If your father was critically demanding and never satisfied with your achievements, you'll seek partners who replicate that dynamic, unconsciously hoping that this time, with the right person, you'll finally be good enough to receive unconditional love. Repetition compulsion explains why even when you find someone who treats you well, it can feel boring or lacking chemistry. Your nervous system is calibrated to interpret drama, uncertainty, and emotional struggle as indicators that this is real love. Stability, consistency, and respectful treatment can feel strange, even untrustworthy, because they don't activate the same neural circuits you associate with intense falling in love. Here we arrive at the transformative knowledge that will forever change how you understand your relationships. You're not seeking love, you're seeking resolution. You don't choose people for who they really are, but for their ability to activate in you the same emotional wounds you need to heal. Your unconscious uses romantic relationships as a laboratory where you experiment again and again with the same hypothesis. Can I finally get love from someone who replicates the characteristics of who didn't love me completely in the past? The toxic person who can't commit isn't your enemy. They're the instrument your psyche has chosen to confront you with your own fear of abandonment. The emotionally unavailable partner isn't there to make you suffer. They're reflecting your own emotional unavailability toward yourself. The manipulator who plays with your feelings isn't an accident in your life. They're the external manifestation of the ways you yourself manipulate and betray your own needs out of fear of rejection. This reframing is devastating and liberating at the same time. Devastating because it means you've been an unconscious accomplice to your own relational suffering. Liberating because it implies you have much more power than you believed to change these patterns. You're not a victim of circumstances or toxic people. You're an emotional archaeologist who unconsciously excavates the same ruins over and over, hoping to find the treasure that will confirm your worth. The deepest revelation is that these patterns aren't designed to make you suffer, but to make you grow. Your soul is using relationships as a vehicle of evolution, repeatedly confronting you with the same lessons until you finally learn them. Each person who attracts to your life carries coded information about aspects of yourself you need to integrate, accept, or transform. This means that the person who cheated on you is reflecting the ways you deceive yourself. Who abandons you is showing you how you emotionally abandon yourself when you need yourself most. Who doesn't value your dedication is externalizing your own inability to value yourself without external validation. Each relational wound is simultaneously an ancestral wound, a personal wound, and an opportunity for generational liberation. The path to freedom from these patterns doesn't begin by trying to find the right person, but by developing a radically honest relationship with yourself. You need to become an archaeologist of your own psyche, exploring without judgment the programming you received in your early years of life. This implies asking uncomfortable questions. What beliefs about love did you absorb by observing your parents? What behaviors did you learn were necessary to receive attention or affection? In what ways do you betray yourself in relationships out of fear of conflict or abandonment? Real healing occurs when you begin to reparent the wounded parts of yourself that seek external validation. It means learning to give yourself the type of love you've been desperately asking from others. Unconditional, constant, without hidden agenda. It means developing the ability to be with yourself without needing distraction or company, to validate your own emotions without requiring others to confirm them, to establish boundaries without guilt and maintain them without resentment. This process isn't quick or linear. It requires you to go through what mystics call the dark night of the soul, that period where you confront the depth of your conditioning and realize how much of your identity is built around patterns that no longer serve you. It can include periods of conscious solitude where you choose to be without a partner, not as punishment, but as an act of self-love. Giving yourself the time and space necessary to know yourself without the distraction of pleasing or impressing another person. Transformation occurs when you develop what psychologists call internal security, the ability to emotionally regulate yourself without depending on others' actions, words, or presence. This doesn't mean becoming independent to the extreme of not needing bonds, but developing the internal strength that allows you to choose relationships from abundance instead of lack, from genuine desire to share your life instead of desperate need to fill emotional voids. When you achieve this internal transformation, something magical happens in your relational world. People who used to attract you intensely begin to feel energetically incompatible. There's no longer chemistry with those who manipulate you emotionally because your neural circuits are no longer calibrated to interpret instability as love. You're no longer attracted to emotional rescue projects because your sense of worth no longer depends on being needed by someone damaged. Instead, you begin to feel attraction toward people who are in their own growth process, who have a healthy relationship with themselves, who can love without needing to possess, give without needing constant recognition, and commit without losing their individuality. It's not that you find better people. It's that you've become a version of yourself that resonates with a completely different emotional frequency. This change doesn't guarantee you will never again have relational conflicts or that you'll find a perfect partner. What it guarantees is that when challenges arise, you'll address them from a place of internal strength instead of childhood wound. When your partner has a bad day and seems distant, you won't interpret it as evidence that you don't deserve love, but you'll recognize that their emotional state belongs to them, and it's not your responsibility to fix it. When disagreements arise, you'll be able to maintain your position without needing to win or convince, and you'll be able to listen to different perspectives without feeling your identity is being attacked. The beautiful paradox of this process is that the less you need a relationship to feel complete, the more capable you become of creating deep and authentic bonds. When you no longer seek in the other validation of your worth, you can truly see them for who they are, with their virtues and limitations, without the distortion of your emotional projections. When you no longer carry the responsibility of fixing or saving your partner, You can accompany them in their own growth process without losing your center. The relational patterns that once were your prison become your wisdom. You can immediately recognize toxic dynamics because you've lived them from the inside. You can identify red flags you used to ignore because you're connected to your intuition instead of your need. You can establish clear boundaries from love instead of resentment because you understand that protecting your emotional energy is not selfishness, but self-responsibility. The relationship you develop with yourself becomes the template for all your future relationships. If you learn to speak to yourself with compassion, you'll attract people who speak to you with compassion. If you develop the ability to be present with your own emotions without judging them, you'll find partners who can be present with theirs. If you cultivate the ability to love yourself without conditions, you'll magnetize people capable of unconditional love. This isn't magical thinking or superficial law of attraction. It's neuroscience applied to relationships. Your brain is constantly scanning the environment, looking for people who confirm your self-image. If your self-image includes beliefs like, "I am not worthy of constant love," or "I have to work hard to deserve affection," you'll unconsciously seek people and situations that validate these beliefs. But when you transform your relationship with yourself, you literally rewire your brain to seek and recognize different types of people and dynamics. The process of liberation from relational patterns is ultimately an act of emotional archaeology, where you excavate the layers of conditioning that have been directing your love life from the shadows. It requires the courage to face uncomfortable truths about yourself, the patience to unlearn patterns that have been active for decades, and the faith that it's possible to create something completely new from the ashes of what no longer works.